We're finally here at Resident Evil 3. This game right here is very interesting to say the least. There's gonna be some good, there's gonna be some bad, there's gonna be some mixed results. But I wanted to give this game a fair shake. And I wanted to kind of give this review a little different take. As in, I wanted to talk about my experience through understanding Resident Evil 3. To not delay anything, let's get into the review. But first, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the hype button. I'm showing you where it is right now on the screen. I am very grateful for all of you to stop by. God bless. I hope you guys are having a great day. And I'm so grateful that you guys stopped by to watch my channel, because you can watch anybody else but me. So I'm very appreciative. Thanks. Now let's get back into the review. Resident Evil is known to be a project by Shinji Mikami. He was the game director on Resident Evil 1. But you'll notice he's not the game director on Resident Evil 2 or 3. That is why in my Resident Evil 2 review, which you should check out, I was confused on why the direction went more action. And that's because Hideki Kamiya, who's known for games like Bayonetta, worked on that game. Now Resident Evil 3 Nemesis again introduces us to a new game director. Shinji Mikami is the producer, but the director is, I'm probably butchering his name here, Kazuhiro Ayama. So we've had 3 Resident Evil games, all made by 3 different people with 3 different interpretations, but they still build off the foundation laid by Resident Evil 1. That's why they all sort of feel the same, but not exactly. What makes Resident Evil 3 so different than 1 and 2 is this game's gimmick or selling point, which is the Nemesis. The Nemesis is a stalker character that will follow Jill around the entire game, well, at least for the most part. This character, at least from how he functions, is an evolution on the Tyrant from Resident Evil 2. I didn't really talk much about the Tyrant in Resident Evil 2 because I just ran past him. I didn't see no reason to bring him up because he was just kind of a guy that pops up. But in this game, they really wanted to take that aspect of Resident Evil 2 and make it the whole point of the game, at least from the gameplay loop and even the story. How did that work out? Let me tell you my initial experience. I came fresh off of Resident Evil 2, which is a very action-based game that is not difficult compared to Resident Evil 1. So I'm thinking Resident Evil 3 is going to be similar because a lot of Resident Evil 2's DNA is in Resident Evil 3. There's tons of bullets like Resident Evil 2. There's tons of more zombies on the screen. This game now has a dedicated, you can aim at like destructible things in the environment, which we'll talk about a little bit more. So you can blow up like gas tanks easy and stuff like that. So I'm thinking, okay, this is more action like Resident Evil 2. So when I run into the Nemesis, I think I could just take him on. And to be fair, if you're a master at this game, you can. My first time playing this game ever, this guy is kicking my butt like crazy. And due to my stubbornness and me just thinking that I'm a Resident Evil master now, I kept trying to fight him. But again, when you first bump into him at the RPD, even if you don't fight him out in the courtyard with Brad and you wait until he busts through the window, you really aren't prepared to fight him if you've never done this before. And that's where I began to not like Resident Evil 3 very much. I want to be clear, I didn't like it because of my own mistakes. I was playing the game in a weird way that nobody would expect someone who just played the game for the first time to do, which is try to fight the hardest thing in the game, which is the Nemesis. Once I tried to fight him multiple times, and even when I tried to escape from him, I used up a lot of my resources. So even when I ran past him and got to a later part in the game, I realized I didn't have a lot of ammo. And that's when I realized that Resident Evil 3 isn't that much like Resident Evil 2. This game doesn't give you that much ammo, and then we'll talk about that in a minute too, because it does have a cool new mechanic with ammo. But I began to not like Resident Evil 3, just being completely honest, because of my own mistakes. Prayed about it, talked to God about it, and I was like, I really want to like this game. If I don't like it, I just don't like it. Am I doing something wrong? And after I prayed, he told me to start the game over. So I did, and that's when I realized that I had just been playing the game all wrong. My first mistake was thinking that it was like Resident Evil 2 with the ammo. Yes, you can get tons of ammo in this game, but not in the same way as you did in any other Resident Evil game. In Resident Evil 1 and 2, you would just find ammo, and 2 just gave you a bunch when you found it anytime you saw it out. In Resident Evil 3, you have to strategically build up to having buttloads of ammo. The brand new crafting system is how you do this. You can find bullets out and about, but you're more than likely going to find gunpowder. There are 3 types of gunpowder, A, B, and C, and you can mix them however you want. And after you mix them, you take them to the reloading tool, which you start the game with, and then it creates bullets for you. But the strategy is in understanding the leveling system. So the way it works is, let's say you have gunpowder type A. The more you make gunpowder type A, the more bullets Jill gets back. She starts off with 15. Once she levels up, she gets 17, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. Now, this is where it gets tricky. If you happen to be level 1 with crafting, well, you could technically make more than 15 in the beginning if you combine 2 A type gunpowder. So you'll take A and A and make AA powder, and then that will make 35 bullets. The reason why you don't want to do this is because gunpowder is hard to find and it's random. We'll get into the randomness in a minute. With that being said, it is better for you to just make a bunch of regular A types until you level it up to the maximum. Not only will you get more bullets quicker when you level up by doing one type at a time and not doubling up on them, but you will then eventually be able to make enhanced version of handgun and shotgun ammo, which does a lot more damage than regular bullets. The only negative is that you get slightly less bullets than before, but I counted like 3 less bullets. It's not that big of a difference. So Resident Evil 3 brings back strategy that Resident Evil 1 had but Resident Evil 2 lacked, but just in a different way, with crafting ammo. I focused on building up my handgun and shotgun ammo and not so much creating grenade rounds. Grenades are very powerful in this game, but I just didn't feel the grenade was that useful most of the time. I could get away just using my shotgun and handgun. And remember that randomness I told you about? This is where Resident Evil 3 really took me by surprise. I heard that Resident Evil 3 had some type of randomness to it, but not to this degree. My first sign of the random generator was actually in the RPD. When you go to the RPD, there's a hallway that you revisit from Resident Evil 2, and in this hallway, I encountered some dogs. I died and reloaded my save, and next time it was a hallway full of cops. And I was like, that's weird. I also got the Magnum one time in the RPD, but then another time, I actually got the grenade launcher. That's not all. In the RPD, there's a code that you need. One time the code was one set of numbers, and then the next time it was another set of numbers. I don't know how many variations there are to any of these random number generated events, but I will say that them being here at all was very interesting because it made each playthrough, well, I didn't go through playthroughs, but at least every time I died, it made me question, will I get something different this time around? And sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't. This is why so many people say Resident Evil 3 is so replayable, because you don't know exactly what you're going to get. I'll give you another example. When I was locked inside this cellar area, there was a puzzle that really wasn't much of a puzzle, but there's a puzzle to get in here. And there's 2 set of answers that I got. One time it was one code, the other time it was another code. You had to watch the TV commercial to see what the code was. Not only that, but when I went in there my first time, it only showed me gunpowder A. The second time I got gunpowder A and gunpowder B, so the random number generator was actually better my second time around. All of this is cool. It adds to the replay value of Resident Evil 3, but it also makes each run different. I think the way it works overall is that by the end, because in my playthrough by the end, I had a lot of ammo, but that was because I was using my crafting efficiently, and I also wasn't, wasteful with my resources. If you're wasteful with your resources, like I was my first time playing, because I was too busy trying to be a badass and kill Nemesis for the first time, in combination with the random number generator saying, we're not going to give you anything right now, that made my first playthrough horrible. But if I played wiser, which I did the second time around, thank the Lord, I was able to enjoy and appreciate the random number generator, because when I first saw this, it was when I was trying to fight Nemesis, and I was like, this is annoying. I had the grenade launcher before, now they gave me the Magnum this time around, and in my mind, I'm like, isn't one of the whole points of Resident Evil games is to have some type of consistency so that the player can map out their runs? But now that they sprinkled in this sense of randomness to the game, now you have to think about what the generator is going to give you. You can't just rely on muscle memory, because the random number generator may screw you over. And it's not something you can't deal with if you're playing wisely the entire time. So don't get it twisted like there's just a point where your run could be killed. The game isn't built like that. But it is built in a way where if you aren't playing wisely or you don't know exactly what you're doing, then you might be in a bad position. But even that isn't horrible, because the way this game is made, it is made with a big skill gap. And if you master Resident Evil 3's new mechanics with fighting zombies, even if the RNG screws you over a bit, you should be able to survive and even thrive. Now look, I'll be honest with you, haven't mastered it yet, but Resident Evil 3 has a dodge mechanic. I will say, even though the dodge mechanic is cool and I like it, it is still jank. And I'm going to show you why. First, how does it work? Basically, right before you're attacked, if you aim, you will dodge. If you happen to be shooting already and press the fire button right before attack, Jill will dodge. Now there is a special dodge that only got to come out like a few times. I don't know why this happens or doesn't happen. Maybe it's a perfect dodge, but Jill or Carlos will do a roll and then get into like a kneeling shooting position. And I don't know if this is just cool looking or I do more damage this way. I have no idea. It only happened a few times. I'll have to figure it out as I keep playing the game over and over again. But the thing about the dodge mechanic is this. When you watch people who know how to dodge in this game, this game is just a joke to them. So there is proof that if you get really good at this mechanic, you could just make this game super easy. Now, your first playthrough, not really going to be a thing. I'm still trying to get the hang on when the zombies are going to attack me. And this game does have some like automatic dodging going on. So for example, this is where it gets a little weird and where the jank comes in. If you happen to dodge and then another enemy attacks you right after, what the game will do is auto dodge. So it will say you just dodged, but because we know you're going to get hit again, we're going to make you dodge again because it would be unfair. But it doesn't happen all the time, especially when you fight Nemesis. When you fight Nemesis, you can dodge his attack, and because his attack is so wide, it'll still hit you after the dodge. Or if you dodge a grab, he'll still end up grabbing you anyway. And fighting him while he does this, fighting other enemies is still annoying, but him of all, like with his damage output is insane. That is why it's still jank. I like the system, but if they would have ironed that stuff out, like if they would have just gave Jill invincibility frames, it would have made it so much better because it's so unfair to do a dodge correctly and it's already difficult to do. And then you get hit anyway because the attack still, like he hits you, he swings twice, but don't dodge twice. It's very bad. And it's not even like you could put the input in twice. But I've tried to dodge back to back to back without the automatic dodge kicking in, and it doesn't seem to work because there's like a delay. Every time Jill dodges, she'll dodge and then automatically aim at whatever she dodged from. That's cool if you're not super close to something. But if you are and you need to dodge again, that animation, that frame of animation slows you down and it makes you like, it throws your game off. Most enemies in this game are fine for Resident Evil's controls and its dynamic camera shifting. When you fight Nemesis, he's so quick, he's so strong, you're probably gonna be a little scared fighting him. It's not the easiest in the world to fight someone, dodge their attacks. Sometimes you don't even see the attack because it's happening off screen because of the dynamic camera angles. And then when you dodge, you may dodge and then the camera flips on you. And then the game might do like an extra, you know, when the game flips between camera angles in this game, it kind of slows down just a bit, but it's not annoying. There are times where the game, I guess, is trying to process, did you get hit? Did you dodge? What happened? And it slows down just a little bit more than normal. Matter of fact, there was one time I thought the game froze on me. When I was getting the rocket launcher from this case in the stars room, the first time I got the rocket launcher, it just gave it to me. The second time, look, the game just stuck here. And it's because I think the game was trying to decide what random gun it was going to give me this time around. And of course, that doesn't happen with combat, but this game does clearly have some type of loading issue. Now, this is running off the PS5 through emulation. Maybe that's an emulation issue. I don't know. But all I know is that those slowdowns and little hitches when you dodge and then you happen to be dodging right where the camera would shift, or even the moments where you're firing your shotgun and using the enhanced ammo and then the gun pushes you back to another screen. That happened in Resident Evil 2, but it was fine because that game was not built with all these fast moving enemies. That's another thing I need to bring up. The dodge mechanic, even for the normal enemies, the reason why you want to do this is now that the zombies have this new mechanic that the closer they get to you, they'll actually start walking faster towards you, which is good. It increases the challenge. But again, those little hitches in the frame rate or the slowdown, whatever's happening, it can throw you off, or at least it throws me off. So overall, yes, I like the dodge mechanic, but it's all those little problems that equal the big problem. And let me tell you the worst thing. When you die in Resident Evil 3, this game, for whatever reason, takes you all the way back to the main menu, which all the other ones did before. But it feels so slow compared to the other ones, like because it's like a part of the introduction cutscene that I don't care what buttons I'm pressing. You have to let it go by at least a little bit before it lets you skip it. And going in and out and loading in this game is just so slow. I think at this point in the game, they should have figured out a way that when Jill dies, it should say, do you want to load your previous save? If they would have just added that in, that would have been so helpful. I am playing this on PS5, but you just have to trust me and take my word for it. I am not using any of the emulation tool. I'm not using the rewind feature. I'm not doing save states. I'm playing the game like normal. So having to see this screen a bunch of times is annoying. Now, before we go into some of my favorite parts of Resident Evil 3, let's go back to the Nemesis briefly. I thought that the Nemesis was the random element in this game. I thought he would randomly pop up at times. He isn't random. He pops up at the same moments every time in this game. Now, how he behaves may be different, but trust me, whatever time the story says Nemesis is going to be here, he's going to be there. You can easily keep track of Nemesis based upon his theme music playing, and you'll hear him stomping around the world. So outside of the beginning, he's never like a surprise to you. You'll know he's around. And you can use this music to your advantage because when I finally got into City Hall, Nemesis was stalking me before that. As soon as I got into City Hall, I noticed his music stopped playing. So I went backwards to retrace myself to pick up any items that I missed while he was stalking me. And the cool thing is when he's stalking you in the streets of Raccoon City, the game kind of despawns zombies and then they'll spawn back in. So even when you backtrack, it's not like the city is safe. You'll now have to fight the normal zombies this time around. Like I said before, Nemesis is built off of the blueprint of the Tyrant from Resident Evil 2, and they completely just made it 10 times better, and he's an actual real threat in this game compared to the Tyrant in Resident Evil 2. Nemesis will pop up in moments like I wasn't expecting him. Like when he popped up in the burning building, when he'll drop down from like, I guess he's dropping down from skyscrapers. He's everywhere. And the brilliant thing, this is how he weaves into the story. Everybody at this point, even me that didn't know nothing about Resident Evil 3, I've heard of the line from Jill saying,
"You want stars? I'll give you stars."
As cheesy as it sounds, that line works because Nemesis is so annoying. And if you don't know how to beat him easily, he's going to be throwing you around this entire game. About time you get to this point, you're gonna feel Jill. You're gonna be rooting for her to just kill him. Matter of fact, they give you a choice to take him out now or just run away from him. And I choose to take him out now because I got to the point. This is how well this story and the gameplay wove together with Nemesis that I felt like even if Jill dies, even if Jill felt like she would have to die, it's better to kill him now just in case he ever comes back. And that was brilliant. Even though Nemesis being annoying added to the ending and the feeling of victory once Jill killed him, it still doesn't take away the fact that him being annoying is still sort of a problem. He's not annoying because he chases you around. He is annoying because he's unfair at times. I already mentioned that Jill can get hit by him even when she perfectly dodges an attack. But the most annoying thing about Nemesis is that the best way to beat him anytime he pops up is if you could find a place in the environment where he gets stuck against something, you could just unload bullets on him. Yes, there are more legit strategies like getting very good at the dodge and crafting very powerful ammo, but again, that relies on you being very good at the game, which only gonna take time, and that also relies on you having good RNG with the random number generator and still being good enough to survive until you face Nemesis to use your powerful weapons and not beforehand. And even then, if you look up some of the best Resident Evil 3 players, they're still using these exploits of him getting stuck against objects because it's just the best way to take him out. Now, the other issue isn't the game's fault, but the fact that I'm playing on PS5. When Nemesis grabs you, you're supposed to tap every button imaginable to get back up. The DualSense ain't built for all that, all right? It just ain't. It feels like I'm about to break my controller, and the fact that it has adaptive triggers, which have a long pull, it ain't the same as the DualShock 1, which that was just a button. So that's something you need to keep in mind when you're playing on the PS5. I mentioned choices in this game and they mostly involve Nemesis. They're called live selections. Now, it adds to the replay value because anytime they pop up, you have two different options. The only issue I have with them is that a few of them I felt were weird choices. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Like for example, when you get to the point you're in the kitchen with Nemesis, it says hide in the kitchen or go in the cellar. In my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna go in the cellar because Nemesis is literally in the kitchen. There's no place to hide from him. It didn't make sense to me. And then going in the cellar, there's nothing down there, and eventually Nemesis like destroys the upstairs area where it makes the basement flood, so you come up anyway. And I'm like, this was a waste of time. But if you choose to hide in the kitchen really means Jill is about to throw a bomb in the kitchen and blow the Nemesis up. Like stuff like that was kind of like weird. Like I don't know why. Like those are just completely different. That's not the same as hiding in the kitchen. Blowing up the kitchen is not hiding in the kitchen. Then you have playing as Carlos, which you only do once, and he plays just like Jill. The only difference is that he doesn't get access to any of Jill's guns. He has his own guns, his own ammo count, and maybe the RNG plays into his role as well. I felt like I had barely just enough to survive. Maybe the game is purposely designed this way, but I felt so close to not being able to beat Nemesis near the end when you fight him with Carlos that I started my save over from the beginning and made sure not to use most of my bullets this time around just to be sure. Again, RNG is in this game. I don't know if it has adaptive difficulty. Maybe I could have been fine fighting Nemesis with barely any ammo left, but I felt like I need to start over. So I'm not gonna take any points away from the game because that was an assumption on my part, but I just felt like it was too close to me not having enough resources to beat him. Now let's get on to puzzles, one of my favorite parts of a Resident Evil game. Resident Evil 1 had good puzzles, and some of them could even kill you if you got them wrong. Resident Evil 2, none of them could kill you, but they were all so simplistic. They weren't bad, it's just I felt I was on rails because they were that easy to solve. This game blends the two together. There are some puzzles that's as simple as read a note. The note tells you the solution to something. Just go put the code in where you need to put it in or whatever. And then the randomness can make the code differently, but the solution is still the same. Find the item that tells you what to do, then do the thing. But then there are puzzles like the one with the clock and the weights. I love that puzzle. I prayed to God. I needed some help because it was kicking my butt. But once he told me to take some notes, I was able to solve the puzzles and deeply enjoy them. Another was managing the electricity, where every time you add to the electricity, it adds a certain number. Mine was 15, but other times the random number generator would kick in, it would add 10 or subtract 10 or add 15. It just depended upon how the RNG played out. Matching the melody on the recorder was good as well. Like all the late game puzzles, it was like this game built up with the puzzles. In the beginning, they would just put this item where it needs to be, put in this code that we told you what it is, and then it became, now you need to solve puzzles. Now you need to really think things through. And I thought this was a well-balanced growth in puzzle solving in a Resident Evil game, or really any game for that matter. Now for story and atmosphere. With Resident Evil 3 taking place before and after Resident Evil 2, it kind of made the story not matter. Atmosphere is dope though. Atmosphere is dope. Running through the damaged streets of Raccoon City, which I can only imagine back then, if you play Resident Evil 2, you probably want to explore more of the city itself. And in this game, you get to running across people screaming and then seeing them dead on the floor because you just didn't get to them in time. And I wonder with the RNG, can Jill save these people? I don't know. The guy in the beginning of the game with Jill that locks himself in the container, if you go back there, which you do not have to, he's dead now. And I wonder how much stuff I could actually interact with on my second playthrough. I don't know. Some of this stuff might be static. Like the woman I tried to save, she might always die. I don't know. I did like that stuff. The atmosphere of Resident Evil 3, it is dark. Nemesis is a threat. You feel like you're being hunted. All that works. But the actual story itself, because it sits between its own story and Resident Evil 2, there's really not much there. Resident Evil 2, with Chief Irons being a creep and sabotaging the RPD, with Ada being this mysterious figure that you heard of from Resident Evil 1, finding out that this little girl named Sherry is actually related to the people that made the T-virus and the G-virus, all that stuff is entertaining. None of that's in Resident Evil 3. Resident Evil 3's story almost feels like someone in the boardroom just said, what do you guys think Jill Valentine was up to during the events of Resident Evil 2? And all they came up with was she was at home, zombies attacked, and she survived. Oh yeah, and it was a big guy chasing her all around all day. Because when I tell you, you're not gonna learn any new helpful information about Resident Evil lore here, there's nothing here. Now there's 8 different epilogue endings. Maybe some of those got some interesting tidbits, but just from the main story alone, yeah, it's not much here. Is it entertaining? Yes. But like Nikolai being a traitor and all that stuff, that wasn't all that interesting because it's kind of just obvious. So as far as atmosphere goes, Resident Evil 3 is up there with Resident Evil 2. When it comes to story, it's probably the weakest one out of the bunch because it's just not much here. As far as replay value, Resident Evil 3 probably has the most because of all the randomness this game has, the different choices, 8 different endings. Resident Evil 3 started Mercenaries mode where you have to shoot a bunch of zombies and you get time back every time you make a kill, and you could save up points to buy more powerful guns for the main campaign. There is no arrange mode, but that makes sense because the game kind of builds in arrange mode with the randomness in the main campaign already. With that being said, I can finally say I beat the original trilogy of Resident Evil games. And I gotta say this, I understand why this is a classic franchise because although all of them have their pros and cons, they're all great games. They're all great games. And Resident Evil 3 to me is just as good as 2. It's just a different interpretation. It almost feels like Resident Evil 2 remix. It has the most complex gameplay out of the trilogy. The randomness really adds to the game. If they just would have cleaned up some of the jankiness with the dodging, the lock-on aiming system when you're aiming at like the explosives is kind of whack. If they would have fixed that stuff, I think this would have been basically perfect. And obviously if it had a way better story or just a meaningful story at all, it would have been great as well. But overall, Resident Evil 3 was a great game. Had its issues with it, but I liked it and I definitely will be replaying it. But let me know in the comment section, did you enjoy Resident Evil 3? What were some of the things that you liked about it, didn't like about it when you were growing up? Or if you've never played it before, did this video inspire you to try it? I will recommend to probably play the PC version because you can play with any controller on there and you don't have to worry about destroying your DualSense by tapping all the buttons. But anyway, peace out, God bless, keep gaming. Thank you for stopping by. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit the hype button because not only is it free, but it helps the channel. So I'm very grateful and appreciative if you can do so. But you guys stay safe out there. I love you all. I'm very appreciative of you guys stopping by, and I'll see you in the next video.
stars? I'll give you stars.